for Jessup of the Metagame Gurus. Both he and his brother were live for top 8 last round. Andrew did not win, so he dropped to 10-5. He's the highest tiebreaker 5 loss player, likely playing for a top 16 finish. A good finish by the Jessup brothers. For Danny, though, an invitational top 8 would be quite the prize. Both players keeping on 7, and we are underway. Craig starts with Birds of Paradise.
That's where you want to be. Turn 1 mana creature. Lining up for something powerful like a turn 2 Knight of the Reliquary, maybe a turn 3 Collected Company. Yeah, 4 copies of Knight of the Reliquary, 3 copies of Tireless Tracker, both excellent cards to come down in turn 2. 4 copies of Reflector Mage, not messing around there, and that card is actually very good against Death Shadow. Not just because of the tempo positive nature of it, but if you catch Gurmag Angler or Tassiger with a Reflector Mage, that is very bad for Dan.
Yeah, it's very difficult for him to recast. We do see, for Jessup, a Cycle of Street Wraith and then a Fatal Push. Takes care of Birds of Paradise. Knocking himself down to 15. Making his way was a Fetch, a Shock, and a Street Wraith. And we see from Craig, a Game 1 Bazooka Bog knocks Dan's Graveyard out.
That is surprisingly powerful.
Yeah, certainly if you're looking for a fast tasker, that's offline. Danny will go back to Inquisition of Kozilek then. We see land 3, Tireless Tracker, Collective Brutality, Spell Queller, Knight of the Reliquary. Now, Forest Bazooka Bog for Rocco means that Knight of the Reliquary is offline, and Spell Queller is way offline.
Yeah. And you might reach for the Tireless Tracker for that reason.
Yeah.
For Dan Jessup, the main deck removal spells, 4 copies of Fatal Push and 2 copies of Dismember. 3 drops can be a little bit tough. Have to trigger Revolt to push them. On a long enough timeline, you can't Dismember Knight of the Reliquary at all.
Right. He'll take Tireless Tracker. It's the one castable card. Hopes to dodge some white mana for the time being, as Danny plays a fetch land and passes. See if he can. Does not look like it. Misty Rainforest from Craig Rocco. That'll make white mana if he needs it.
Likely we'll be finding a Hollowed Fountain here.
And there is the fetch land. So, a risk taken by Danny, and he will pay. Fetch here. Looks like we're going to go for that Knight of the Reliquary.
Taking the Tracker is certainly not bad.
Yeah.
You do want an answer to this Knight pretty quickly, but that would also be true against the Tracker. I believe that Dan does have another Fatal Push rolled up, though. That is pretty nice.
And with the fetch land, with the Scalding Tarn he played, you're right, it revolts as well. So a clean answer to Knight of the Reliquary. And I do like where Jessup stands then. He's left his opponent with a Collective Brutality,
which is just not good.
A basic Forest, and then a Spell Queller, which he still can't cast.
Right.
In a deck trying to do so many things, I think Craig punished a bit for some greedy mana. Bazooka Bog in his deck is really,
you
that's a
generally want
gross
a
land.
tutor for that one with Knight. Drawing it usually does not feel great.
And Gurmag Angler to pick up for Danny.
And because of this Black Splash, no room for, I guess there's 1 Ghost Quarter in this deck. You would like to be a little bit heavier on that against Death Shadow because you can start strip mining them.
Okay. Yeah, the ability to make multiple Ghost Quarters is one of the reasons these company decks are good against Death Shadow.
Right, yeah, that's one of the hallmarks of the Todd Stevens Green-White Company deck.
All the cards in the graveyard, all the lands in play will make Gurmag Angler for Jessup. It is a 5/5.
Bazooka Bog couldn't stop that from ever happening.
No, and that's, I mean, the Bog is good. It's just, Grixis Shadow is very adept at putting cards into the graveyard. And Rocco picks up Temple Garden, so his Spell Queller's online.
Shocking to put it up this turn does not feel great.
No.
Also, Danny just knows about it.
Right, you won't play into it. And it looks like what Craig then will do is cast the Collective Brutality. Looks like he's trying to take a card from Jessup's hand. Well, Jessup's hand's terrible. It's 3 more lands, so Rocco doesn't get any of them.
Though without some top decks, Rocco can't beat the Gurmag Angler on the table. He'd love to draw a Reflector Mage.
That would be huge. Well, actually, Danny has enough mana to just recast it.
He'll be able to cast it again in 2 turns, but from 9, the Mage actually is a pretty significant threat.
Yeah. Jessup. Another fetch here.
We'll see how aggressive he gets here. I like finding basic island, and he does.
Yeah, you don't want you don't want to go to 6 for no reason
right,
here.
especially when you just have angler. Your opponent just knows you don't have shadow. You just have a couple lands.
Fetching here, so Jan's draw was Serum Visions. Yeah, he has enough fetch lands that if he wants to go lower on life, he can wait until he draws the shadow first and then do it.
Also, if you just go too low naturally, you end up in a situation where drawing Street Wraith becomes very bad.
An attack from Jessup. He drew Fatal Push off that Serum Visions, and he placed both cards on top. Next turn, he's going to draw Serum Visions, and if he casts it, it will draw him into another Fatal Push.
That covers a lot of Rocco's deck.
Yeah. Next 2 creatures already taken care of. Rocco went to 12 on the attack. Jessup, another Serum Visions. He looks like he wants a second Fatal Push. Rocco will Spell Quell it. And there's no Revolt being triggered here, actually, so the Fatal Push on top of Jessup's deck and the one in his hand aren't online. His hand is Swamp Watery Grave. He'll make the swamp and pass.
He does at least get access to them. He actually ends up getting access to both if he runs into a Reflector Mage on this turn.
Sure.
Because the Angler leaving will trigger Revolt. You push away the Queller, you cast off Serum Visions, draw the other push, push the Reflector Mage. Though you're in a bit of trouble if Knight of the Reliquary comes off the top of the deck.
And that is what Craig drew.
Well.
Yeah, Dan Jessup down to 6. Now, Jessup's going to have a hand of 2 Fatal Pushes. So there is a situation where Jessup can chump block with Angler and then surprise remove all of Craig's creatures. Get back a Serum Visions, maybe rebuild.
It's not the worst.
Yeah, but he needs that to trigger Revolt. He can't do it on his own.
The thing is, regardless of the size of the Knight, it's at least a 4/4. He can't attack because his attack is not lethal, and he's dead on the crackback.
Yeah, 4/4 and 2/2. And so the issue is if Craig just keeps chipping in the air and leaving the Knight back to block, Danny can't trigger Revolt, and he can't stabilize.
On the following turn, if there's no attack here, what Craig can also do, Knight up a Gavany Township, pump up the Spell Queller, that's a 2-turn clock.
Sure. A swing from Gurmag Angler from Jessup. And this is a bit of a bluff, right? What if Craig doesn't block and then Jessup just says, surprise, Colgan's command? But he'll call him on it. He goes to 2, and I think that's a heads-up play by Craig. It's very risky, but he may have just been rewarded.
Yeah.
Land, Birds of Paradise. Not in checking the size of that Knight of the Reliquary here. We'll see.
Does he only have the 1 fetch land?
He only fetched to get the Hollowed Fountain. He didn't fetch for anything else. So it's just an attack for 2.
Yeah, so
Jessup down to 4.
Won't be until the following turn where he can actually make a reasonable block on the Angler.
Yeah, Knight confirmed is a 3/3 here. Craig plays Birds of Paradise and passes. However, if Craig chump blocks... Anyway, Danny drew a fetch land, so maybe none of this matters.
Yeah,
he can now trigger Revolt.
That's a very good draw for Dan. Yeah, there's no secret Dryad Arbor in this deck.
Yeah. Fetch from Danny down to 3, but now Revolt's online. And those 3 drops are just waiting to get hit by Fatal Pushes. Knight is gone. And I wonder, is it safer in Danny's spot? Do you just push the bird and try to win, or do you play a little safer?
Knight finding fetch land makes it so that I can just jump in front of the Gurmag Angler. So I think you have to get rid of the Knight before you go into attacks.
Well, no, I know. The Knight's going to die. Then the question is, does your second Fatal Push go at the Queller or the bird? Do you try to win right now?
I'm pretty into trying to win right now.
Yeah, pushes the bird. It's going to go for lethal. And
what could Craig have?
Swing, and that'll do it. That'll do it.
He can't beat a collected company anyway.
And Craig doesn't have it. Danny Jessup finds the fetch land, revolts those Fatal Pushes, and he wins game 1. And
that fetch land was right on time.
Yeah, I mean, he was waiting for ways to trigger those revolts, and especially because he had 2 Serum Visions, he had set up the removal spells, and you're thinking, man, these cards looked great. And as soon as he tops both of them, then Craig running plays 3 drops. I think, whoa, maybe Danny has let it go.
I don't recall how many cards Craig had in hand, if he had an expendable one on top of the Queller when he cast that Collective Brutality, maybe the 5th land could have been thrown into it. But he drained 2 life there, and it's a weird play. It's not really a matchup where that matters. We might have been looking at a different game.
That's really, you're right. Danny would be at 1. Craig could have main phase knighted, get Gavney Township, gone for lethal.
Right. At that point, he didn't know he was going to produce Knighted Reliquary, you know.
It's kind of, yeah.
That's almost strictly a hindsight play.
All right, well, players are going to sideboard, and we're going to talk about their sideboarding strategies going into Game 2 after this break.
The SCG Tour is brought to you by StarCityGames.com, where you can now order Ixalan boxes, cases, bundles, combo packs, and more. Visit us at StarCityGames.com and order your Ixalan products today.
So Danny Jessup and Craig Rocco are now back as they look through their sideboards for the second game. And actually, they're already underway with the game, so we're going to bring you down to the table. Craig Rocco on the play at 4-Color Company starts with a breeding pool into Birds of Paradise.
Once again, the optimal start. See if he has a little bit better of a follow-up here. With breeding pool instead of basic forest, he's certainly has more access to his colors this game.
And Jessup's going to go ahead and fetch Shock, cycle a Street Wraith down to 15. We'll see how much farther he wants to go. Looks like Fatal Push again for the Birds of Paradise. Second game in a row, he's keeping Craig honest on mana. You see, looks over to Jessup's hand. Looks like I have a couple more copies of Fatal Push.
Yeah, pretty easy sell to Fatal Push the bird when you have an abundance of removal spells.
Yeah, actually, Mike corrected. We have some fetch lands, but
those are a good degree worse than Fatal
I was
Push.
gonna say, there was a double. I believe that's actually Polluted Delta.
Yeah, 4 lands is too many for Death Shadow.
Yeah, there's no real way to undo it, though. You know, no brainstorms type.
They don't
conversion.
give you the nice ones in Modern.
That's why I gotta play Sea Beyond.
There are a couple Liliana the Veil on the sideboard, so you can theoretically end up discarding your extra fetch lands.
We have an opt here from Dan Jessup. Main phase, in case he hits something like a Tasigur, he could just make it on turn 2.
Yep, you see plenty of cards in the graveyard. There are 5 there now.
And he'll keep a Thought Scour. And then Thought Seize Craig. So we'll take a look over at the company player's hand. We have Knight of the Reliquary, Path to Exile, Spell Queller, Plains. I got one more hiding under that Knight of the Reliquary.
I think you can generally leave Path to Exile in the hand.
Yeah, yeah. And that is a Ghost Quarter under the Knight.
One argument for it is it looks like Dan only has 1 threat in his hand. It's a Gourmet Angler. He couldn't cast that one this turn. Has to delve 1 more than Tasigur does.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the opt is if the opt had hit a Street Wraith. I mean, Dan has had some low percentage plays to make a turn 2 threat, and that would have been 1. And he's going to let Craig keep the Knight of the Reliquary, but take out the Spell Queller here.
See Craig saving a little time, cracking his fetch in the middle of the resolution here.
And Spell Queller is binned.
Can be pretty certain that Craig's turn 3 is going to be Knight of the Reliquary pass.
On turn 3, so this gives Craig just an easy, Knight of the Reliquary. And he'll make it. If Jessup has left you that play, then when I'm playing this from the company side, I would think that there's a removal spell, some answers hanging out here. This play is too strong for Dan just to let it happen.
You can expect it. There's really no reason not to cast.
Yeah, you may play into it anyway. We'll see what Danny's answer was. Fetch Shock's down to 7. Knight of the Reliquary already a 4/4, but that Ghost Quarter could be a 6/6. Fetch land 7. I mean, we're already looking at a lethal Knight swing. It doesn't take too much to make that happen.
That happens pretty quick.
Snapcaster Mage. Okay, into Fatal Push. So fetch land, Snapcaster, Fatal Push. There was Danny's answer. We go back over to Rocco.
Speaking of lethal, get that one off the table. There is the 1 Ghost Quarter for Rocco. Decent in this matchup, though, for Dan. He does have a couple of basics. If Craig wants to get aggressive with it, take care of that Blood Crypt right away. Dan can't find a mountain because he doesn't play a mountain, so you can find island or swamp there. He would no longer be representing Collected Company for the turn, though if he doesn't have it, it doesn't matter if you represent it. But he does have it, and he's going to cast it. Doesn't want to get stubborn denialed, so it makes some sense to main phase it here. Looking at the top 6.
All right, so that Collected Company gets Knight of the Reliquary Scavenging Ooze. That's a huge find for Craig.
Those are some nice returns. Already a few creatures in the graveyard for that Scavenging Ooze. A few lands for the Knight as well. Suddenly that Snapcaster Mage is not going to be able to make an attack.
And here's Thoughtscar. Danny will target himself. And both these cards, the Knight of the Reliquary and the Scavenging Ooze, really feel like they are must-answer threats here. It's going to really put pressure on Danny to have, Snapcaster, Fatal Push, something of that sort.
Yep.
So Thought Scours. Gonna see a Death's Shadow, currently a 6/6. We'll see a Gurmag Angler. Okay, the other option is if Danny can't remove the creatures, he can try to power through them. And with Knight of the Reliquary, that is not easily done.
No.
Even by something like Death's Shadow. And is this the kind of situation where we start to see those Ghost Quarters, something like that, come up? Craig hangs back, blocks, and slowly takes Danny off mana?
So the issue is he's only playing 1 copy, and there's no way to rebuy it. He's not playing a Ramunap Excavator or anything like that.
So he doesn't really have the repeating Ghost Quarters strategy here. He's going to win with something a little more proactive.
Yeah, he used the quarter more of a toolbox thing to grab with this Knight of the Reliquary, more to grab special lands. Something like a Gavany Township and a Green-White Mirror.
Okay. There is still that Path to Exile left over. Looks like that will be fired off by Craig. It hits the Death's Shadow.
And previously, Danny did mill his swamp with a Thought Scour. So with this island here, that's going to be the last basic. It does have the fetch land up, though, so you can go and find another red source. So we can't be ghost quartered off of red. So the ghost quarter not figuring to do very much.
And not right now. It's a bit of a standoff here. Jessup at 7, Rocco at 16. Snapcaster Mage and a land are the leftover cards in Jessup's hand. Looking at his graveyard, though, the only instant right now is a copy of Opt.
Snapcaster Mage is pretty bad against Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah. Rocco with 1 green up.
Dan would really love to draw Fatal Push. Fatal Push the Ooze, crack that fetch, Snapcast push the Knight. Suddenly he's in a very good
great.
spot.
Yeah, that's
big
that's
ask.
Great.
It's a big ask.
Tassiger.
That one's less good.
That's good. Not horrible. I mean, it's a 4/5. Danny still has a graveyard.
Yeah.
And with how Tassiger reads, there's no even on an empty graveyard, Tassiger can do something. When he mills 2 and your opponent chooses a card to give back to you, and there's no window in there for Scavenging Ooze to be used, so you can flip a Fatal Push and get it. Because that Ooze, I don't know if there's any reason for Danny to keep any of his graveyard around, and he'll delve the whole thing away to Tassiger, the Golden Fang.
And in particular, he's not really into getting the Snapcaster Mage back with an activation. Doesn't really care about getting the Opt back.
Yeah.
May as well exile them.
Yeah, I mean, until he draws the Fatal Push, none of that matters. I mean, the Scavenging Ooze has him.
Yep. Though until he finds it, Dan's just kind of treading water. Before long, that Knight just becomes a really big problem, especially with the Noble Hierarch to assist in attacking.
And now the Knight goes to work, sacrifices a Plains. I mean, eventually, I imagine we're going to see the Gavany Township be searched up.
Yep, Township's fine for now. I like this, just getting fetch lands.
Make the Knight
grab
bigger.
Another land.
Yeah, so it gets Misty Rainforest, sacrifice Misty Rainforest, gets Basic Forest, +2 for the Knight, thin out the deck. And now the Knight is out of range of the other cards.
Yeah. If you get into a position where the Knight just trades with the entire team, if you get it up to a 10-10, then you just attack. You don't even care anymore. The first swing will only eat the Snapcaster Mage, so you just have to figure a way to not die on the crackback, which shouldn't be hard. He has plenty of life and a Scavenging Ooze. Back to Rocco. Didn't see what the draw was, though, until Dan does more than this. He doesn't really need any additional tools. It was a fetch land. It's not a great draw. If he's at a threshold already where the Knight can attack for 10, that's the sweet spot. 11's a little sweeter so that you can eat the Snapcaster Mage too, but that's not super important.
Yeah, I mean, at 11, you start... As long as you do you want to get to the point where it trades, or do you just even wait a turn to go bigger, go to 12, and then you're the king of the combat, and they just start chump blocking?
The thing is, the Ooze can just clean up.
So a large trade is fine.
You just come out at the end of it, and you still have a lethal creature.
And yeah, still going to work with that Knight of the Reliquary, now getting Horizon Canopy. And we've seen Knight of the Reliquary be so good against Death Shadow, as it's a big enough blocker to block all the undercosted threats, and then it has this inevitability with its land searching. Even if it's not Ghost Quarters, it's this, and that's good too.
You see, you floated a mana prior to that, so you use that mana to sacrifice the Canopy. I assume he drew a spell, given that he's thinking it all right now. And he's just going to pass it back.
Okay. Well, that leaves the Knight tapped.
Yeah, he wanted to see if he can get a little bit more action. If he converted that Canopy into a second Knight, suddenly the game's pretty easy.
Jessup down to 6 on the fetch here. I guess Rocco's at a pretty healthy 17. He can even take a hit without. Yeah, if Danny starts attacking, Craig's counter swing is really big.
Yeah. Draw for Jessup there. I want to say it was a collective brutality. It has some spots in this matchup, but this is not one of them. Creatures on the battlefield outsize it. You can't hit anything in hand that matters. If there's a collected company there, Rocco's just going to cast it in response.
All right, so he draws the collective brutality. In Danny's spot, you want to make a move. Things aren't going to get much better here, if at all possible. But he is, looks like he's got a polluted delta, collective brutality. He's going to attack with Gurmag Angler. And just that. Third card in Danny's hand, another Tassiger. Rocco will go down to 12.
Pretty free to just take 5 there.
Yeah, he has life points to work with.
No reason to put the Scavenging Ooze in jeopardy, and really no huge reason to get rid of the Hierarch. That can make a chump block on a more significant turn down the road.
Ooze keeps going to work. Now up to a 5/5. It eats a Knight of the Reliquary out of the graveyard. One more creature in the graveyard, and then the Ooze is out of range of everything. Craig will have 2 large blockers.
Now that the Angler is attacked, you could theoretically see Craig attack with the Ooze and the Knight on this turn. I suppose that the Ooze is no way to be lethal just yet, so that wouldn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, we'll go over to Rocco, and very few lands actually left in his deck here.
Depending on what he drew, so if you attack with both, the Snapcaster Mage jumps in front of the Knight. Even if you just connect, Dan doesn't have lethal on the crackback, so you still might see that Ooze attack, even though it's not lethal.
Yeah. I mean, you can attack with it alone, and then when it exalts, it's lethal. And actually, Craig's going to make that play.
Yeah, this is fine.
It's a 6/6. Tassiger. It's going to be used by Jessup.
Looking for land plus Fatal Push.
Yeah, no, there's actually a risk here, though. If he hits creature plus spell, which he did, Craig can give him the spell, eat the creature, and then the Scavenging Ooze just is large enough to not care.
Yeah, then it just... I suppose the Ooze, it just exalted to a 6, you can make it a 7. Yeah, so the Snapcaster Tassiger, they can't do anything about that.
And that's what he's going to do. So now Snapcaster alone has to go in front of the Ooze. That puts 2 creatures in the graveyard for Jessup.
We're really moving towards a Craig Rocco win in game 2 here.
At 13, a virtual 15. Now he may want to eat those creatures straight away because of the existence of Delve cards. And a big draw by Jessup is Fatal Push. This could matter. That's actually a huge draw. He's got Fatal Push. He still, I believe, has a Snapcaster.
Question is, can he revolt without chump blocking?
He might be able to revolt. But if he gets the Ooze with the front half...
Still has that polluted delta, yeah, so he should be able to push, snap, push.
That's a big turnaround.
An interesting card to consider is Sagiri Step, whether or not the Knight can grab it. It's not in Rocco's deck, but you've already seen Bojuka Bog, and people that Knight into Bog are very much in the range of people that Knight into Sagiri Step.
Yeah, back when Mythic Conscription was a thing, this was a very common play, when this was a standard legal card. Sometimes you'll still see a Sagiri Step. Well, and he'll still get to find out now. Here's Fatal Push on Scavenging Ooze. There's no step, but there is a Spell Queller.
Well, that'll do it.
And you know, on Danny's side, Ryan, I want to back up for a second. He has a Thoughtseize here.
He didn't have the mana to leverage it is the issue.
Okay, you can't try to Thoughtseize there.
Presumably his fetch land had to fail to find, probably because of the Thought Scour some activation.
Oh,
We have
okay. If
two Grave Blood Creatures. He actually just
Yeah.
has all his lands on the battlefield. He can't actually leverage the Thoughtseize.
Okay, is the swamp's
His swamp's
gone?
he bin that with a Thought Scour.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's not a land in his hand.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Then he can't Thoughtseize there, and which means the Spell Queller does get his Fatal Push.
Yep. Yeah, the only thing he could have done is waited a turn, but things just get worse for him every turn now
Yeah.
that Craig's creatures are in the Abyss mode.
Well, here's Collective Brutality. Can use it to remove the Noble Hierarch. That's it. Scavenging Ooze, Elite Snapcaster Mage, Rocco back up to 14. Scavenging Ooze, as you mentioned, the Abyss mode, it's up to 6/6. I suppose it can get double blocked.
Not on the following turn when Craig just attacks with both creatures. Yeah, these will both be lethal on the following turn. More than enough lands over these turns. Not sure exactly on the stats of the Knight of the Reliquary, but well over 6.
Attention Magic players. We are now opening registration.
Knight of the Reliquary going to go to work some more. These green mana will exile cards in Danny's graveyard. And this might be headed for a third game.
Very much looking like it.
Feels like Danny has one more turn to find a Fatal Push before everything is out of control.
With Craig finding the Township, though, the Spell Queller is actually lethal in 2 turns, assuming that he activates it. So if Craig just Alpha Strikes, if there's a double chump and he connects with the Queller, then Fatal Push doesn't even do it. Well,
You're right.
yeah, well, hold on. You Fatal Push the Queller, you need to trigger a Revolt.
The problem is you have to get
That's the
all
real
3
issue
guys.
there. You can't trigger a Revolt is the problem. That's the choking point.
Yeah. Well, you have to get all 3 creatures, and 2 pushes won't do it.
Yeah, well, push the Queller, you get that push back.
Okay.
Resolve that, Snapcaster push. That is 3. The problem is none of them can kill a 3-mana creature.
Sure. And here's the double chump block. Yeah, you'd have to draw Fatal Push and a fetch land in the same turn.
Right. Yeah, Thoughtseize in his hand is not going to do it.
And Rocco keeps the graveyard light. Scavenging Ooze does more work. Danny draws a card. It's Death's Shadow. That's not going to do it. It is a 9/9, but Craig with plenty of lethal attackers here.
Yeah, the only hope for Dan is, for some reason, Craig just doesn't make an attack.
Townships up the team.
And with this end step activation, you'll go to the Township on this turn. Now the Queller's lethal. Both the creatures on the ground still very lethal.
And we see Knight of the Reliquary do some work here against Death's Shadow. The ability to block for turns as it slowly ground out advantage, and Craig Rocco is going to take the first sideboarded game. "17 minutes remain in the round for both players. This one's not going to draw, not with where the standings are at.
No.
And full swing.
5 PM standard challenge player.
He'll try for Snapcaster Mage.
Your first round has begun. Please report to table 434.
And Craig's going to quell that one too. That's enough. So, 1 game apiece for Craig Rocco and Danny Jessup. They are going to quickly shuffle up as the third deciding game on this win and in is going to come up after this short break. All right. Game number 3, Danny Jessup versus Craig Rocco. Be 16 minutes for the third game here. Winner will be in top 8. We do have some results from some of our other matches. I can now say Benjamin Nikolic, despite the pair down, he wins and is in the top 8. Also, Austin Collins, the player we saw concede to Sam Black last round, won his last win and in, and we project that he also will be playing on Sunday.
Nice. Now we're seeing Danny Jessup starting on the
14
combo
life.
draw.
Yeah.
3 street race cycled before making a land drop.
When I'm playing my combo decks, I am terrified of this draw. I'm not even joking.
The old turn 1 Death Shadow, do we have it? Do we have it?
When they just turn 1 Death Shadow, and then they turn 2 Fetch Shock Thoughtseize, go to 7, and they just like, turn 3 me with a Battle Rage, it's really scary.
Thanks for playing.
Yeah. So, Danny, cycle, Fetch Shock. That takes 9. Here's a 2-in-1 Death Shadow. It's a 2/2. There's another one in his hand.
You know that Wild Nikadla used to be banned in Modern? You remember that?
This one's only a 2/2. This is like Kumena's speaker. Oh wait. Nope, it's better. It's different. I take it all back. Who knew he'd have another way to deal damage?
Yeah, weird.
So
he used all those street rays. How many possible lines could he have?
Here's a swing with Death Shadow. How about a 5/5 for 1?
Here's the Path to Exile check. If it's not there, this is looking to be a runaway for Dan.
How about another Death Shadow? He's got one. Maybe even 2 more.
2 more would be just absurd.
That'd be like we were playing Eldrazi Winter. It's like turn 1, make a 5/5. Turn 2, make 2 more. Second Shadow. Rocco's at 15. So this attacks for 10. It means 1 more fetch land is a turn 3 kill.
Hey.
And that's on my bingo card. Turn 3 win.
And as the things stand, Dan has a Fatal Push in hand. He won't be able to Fatal Push a 3-drop, but guess what? Despite Dan having 2 5/5s, Craig will only be making a second land drop on the following turn.
Dan's hand has not 1 Fatal Push, Ryan, but it is 2 Fatal Pushes.
Snapcaster
And a
Mage?
No, it's 2 Fatal Pushes and a Snapcaster Mage.
Oh.
The last 4 cards are land 3, push, Snapcaster Mage. It's a really good hand.
You might say that this is an above-average draw.
Remember sometimes people say Death Shadow feels like you're playing Legacy. Well, this hand's really good.
Craig doesn't even have access to Swords to
Selfless Spirit. Well, we'll push that one away. If he draws a fetch land, Dan has a turn 3 win. Oh, he's going to go for it. Here's Thought Scour. Thoughtseize, fetch land.
He wanted to draw that Thoughtseize.
I know. Where the fetch land? Draws. Oh, Collective Brutality.
He doesn't want to
I was
drain
going to cross
life.
off this turn 3 win box. To be fair, I didn't think the turn 3 win was going to come from Death Shadow.
Yeah.
I was banking on maybe like Storm or something else. Here's an attack. Craig is down to 4.
And he sits on the Brutality because Craig's not going to have the opportunity to actually cast Collected Company this game. And if it's just a turn 3 Tireless Tracker, he can kill that. Not that he needs to, because he has 2 lethal creatures.
Sometimes this is a really good deck.
Never
Wow,
mind.
but if he cast it,
The
Craig couldn't
Brutality-
make the land
Well, the
drop.
Brutality is just lethal now, so
Okay.
Dan goes to his next turn, cast that wins the game.
Reflector Mage. The Fatal Push is also lethal, and there's Collective Brutality. And Danny Jessup, his deck shows up when he needs it the most. Grixis Death Shadow is the winner. Danny Jessup is your winner, and he is the 6th player in our Invitational top 8.
I gotta say, Grixis Death Shadow generates a lot of hard games, a lot of skill testing games, a lot of games that are very close, some that are very frustrating. But then, the reason you play the deck, sometimes you get games like that.
It's games like that that make me want to play the deck.